Hope everyone's had a good weekend. If you're following these through, then it will be Monday, and yeah, I hope that the weekend has been a blessing for you. It's been a great weather again. And for those of you that have been following through these vlogs, you'll know that we are looking through Ecclesiastes. If you haven't been following them through, then I encourage you to go back and listen to the previous 5, I think there is, before this, and just in terms of where we are with Ecclesiastes. So we're looking at Ecclesiastes and looking at how that relates to us in this time. And we've got today to Ecclesiastes 5. So Ecclesiastes 5 says, and I'm reading from the New King James Version today, "Walk prudently when you go to the house of God, and draw near to hear rather than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they do evil. Do not be rash with your mouth, and let your heart utter anything hastily before God, for God is in heaven and you on earth. Therefore let your words be few, for a dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better not to vow than to vow and not pay. Do not let your mouth cause your flesh to sin, nor say before the messenger of God that it was an error. Why should God be angry at your excuse and destroy the work of your hands? For in the multitude of dreams and many words there is also vanity, but fear God. If you see the oppression of the poor and the violent perversion of justice and righteousness in a province, do not marvel at the matter. For high official watches over high official, and higher officials are over them. Moreover, the profit of the land is for all. Even the king is served from the field. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance will increase. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. So what profit have the owners, except to see them with their eyes? The sleep of a labouring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much. But the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. There is a severe evil which I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner to his hurt, but those riches perish through misfortune. When he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, naked shall he return, to go as he came, and he shall take nothing from his labour which he may carry away in his hand. But this also is a severe evil. Just exactly as he came, so shall he go. And what profit has he who has laboured for the wind? All his days he also eats in darkness, and he who has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Here is what I have seen. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labour in which he toils under the sun, all the days of his life which God gives him, for it is his heritage. As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage and rejoice in his labour, this is the gift of God. For he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart." So a few things within this that I think are really key, particularly to where we are today. Firstly, Solomon is talking about the house of God, and we can equate that to the church today. But he says, draw near to hear rather than to give sacrifice to the fools. And Solomon is saying, draw near to hear God. Hear God. Rather than to follow through the sacrifice of the fools. Now, at this time, obviously, there was a lot of sacrifices, and we know what Jesus then challenges in terms of sacrifices becoming rituals, things that don't come from the heart, but are just a ritual thing that is being put in place. And I just, in this time and day, how many times do we do rituals over heart? we have heard so many times, and I'm sure you've heard so many times as well, about rituals in the church, and the church taking ritual. They do things out of religiosity rather than out of the heart. And in this time where church buildings have had to close, some of those rituals haven't been able to be followed through. Some of them have, and some of them still have going. But at the beginning of all of this, there was this whole, oh, how are we going to do church now? And blah, 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 and all these sorts of things. And we weren't looking at the heart. What is it to follow Jesus? What is it to follow Jesus? That's the key. And as we move through all of this lockdown, and as we come to see and start of these things lifting, even now, some of you may be listening to this years after, but even now, there are churches that are thinking of suing the government because the government locked down churches. Now, I think we've lost the plot again, because personally, I understand opening church buildings, but personally, you don't have to be in a church building to find God, to find Jesus. Jesus is here, he's in us. And if we're going to start suing the government, suing the authorities, the very people that we should be praying for as a church, then what are we doing? There is a very clear difference. I know some people can come back and challenge me and say, oh, yeah, but what about Jesus overturning the money tables? Now, hold on a minute. There's a clear difference here. There's a clear difference in the fact that we have, in that passage, the culture of that time. Whereas Jesus clearly tells us in his teaching, and Paul tells us, it's Jesus in me. The kingdom is here. We are the church. Us. We. Individually. We are the church. Not the building. We. And so what Jesus would do now, not rather in the building, but in us, he would overturn us. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to overturn us. He wants to pull out all the ugliness within ourselves. Come near to here rather than give sacrifice to the fools. And then Solomon goes on and he talks, we've talked before about how Solomon looks at life and looks at the labour of people and all of those sorts of things. And he comes to a conclusion here where he says, here is what I have seen. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labour in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life which God gives him, for it is his heritage. And then he goes on to say that about this being the gift of God. God gives us gifts. He gives us things. And we are to enjoy those things. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labour. Enjoy it. Enjoy what we're doing. If we're doing things with a heavy heart, then we need to check our heart again. Are we doing things out of religiosity? Are we doing things because we have to do them rather than what is in our heart? And that doesn't just equate to church, that equates to everything. In our job, in our daily life, are we doing things because we have to do them, or do we do things out of a heart? Do we do things out of a love? Do we see the love behind things? Even things like washing up. Why do we wash up? Well, if we don't wash up, then the plates stack up, etc. Now, I totally get that, but where's the love in seeing dirty plates stack up? Do we do things out of love? Do we do things out of hearing God, of drawing closer to him? Bless you. I hope this has been an encouragement again today. And we will move on tomorrow and look at Ecclesiastes 6.